This conference will now be recorded.
And my name is Rich Maliaco. I'm a meteorologist at the Weather Service in Glasgow. Thank you all again for being here for the Montana CoCoRaHS winter training. For those of you that are here, we're going to take about 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes on some material. We'll start off by giving an introduction to CoCoRaHS, what the program or observing network is about, and then we'll go into sort of how to take some snowfall and winter type measurements, kind of the information we're looking for. And so once you've learned how to sign up, take those measurements, we'll then talk about how you send in those reports. And then once you get into the springtime, we can do a warm season training that kind of focuses more on that. So the CoCoRaHS coordinators, there's one at each of the Montana Weather Service offices. Kurt Hooley is here listening in from the Billings office. Trent Smith from Missoula and Matt Moorman from Great Falls. Unfortunately, we're not able to make it today, but they did help out in getting this going. So I want to extend a thank you to all of them and Kurt as well for the collaboration. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to present the slideshow here, and hopefully everybody can see that now. So CoCoRaHS stands for the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, and we like to say that every drop counts when we're measuring precipitation. Whether you have a trace, a hundredth, every bit, we want to hear about that. So CoCoRaHS is made up of volunteers of various backgrounds, all ages, and we essentially take precipitation measurements in our own backyard, send it in, and you don't necessarily have to have any kind of a scientific background or anything to do this, just a dedication, willingness to help out, and it's a good way to do something positive for the community. So we measure a combination of rain, hail, and snow. Today's talk will focus on that snow, and it's very easy to get started. All the equipment is generally pretty low cost. You'll need a 4-inch diameter rain gauge and a ruler or yardstick to get started. And we can talk about how to get those a little bit later on. uh, so here is the CoCoRaHS website that you'll want to become familiarized with. And you can see the join button on the upper right hand side. I think this image is a little old. It's been updated now. I think it's orange today. So the process is still the same. You hit that join button after today's talk and then follow the steps to sign up. Uh, why do you want to become a CoCoRaHS observer? Well, here in the uh, the northern high plains and into the Rockies, pretty much anywhere in the country for that matter, precipitation can be highly variable. So we all have seen thunderstorms in the summertime, for example, where it rains at your house, but then your neighbor next door across the block from you got hardly anything at all. So knowing exactly where that spread is, who got what, can be helpful. Here in Montana, sometimes that data is kind of those data sources are few and far between. And so the more observers we have, we can kind of fill in those gaps and get that ground truth. And some sources out there are not always all that accurate. See the snow graphic, the bottom left there, that snow drift. So if you measure the snow, that's an example of what not to do, measure in the drift. But there are some measurements out there that just simply aren't reliable. So to have a couple for comparison as always helps with verification. And of course, storm reports can help save lives. Your information can make it into a warning and our verification and really make a difference for somebody else. So if the storm hasn't yet hit somebody further downstream of us, so say the storm is in Montana now, you're sending in your reports and it's heading into North Dakota, the reports you send out may then help those that haven't yet been hit by the storm be better prepared. But it's not just us at the Weather Service that uses CoCoRaHS data. Insurance adjusters, mosquito control, farmers and ranchers, has applications in education by a number of teachers and students alike, also to help study uh, drought information. So there's just a number of reasons why CoCoRaHS observations are important. So to get started, we're going to see together here what we need from you to get started, and it begins with a completed application form. That's all done online today. So again, that website, you hit that join button and you'll just follow the steps there, and it'll create a station based on your location. And then once you have a station name and your location set up, then you just need a commitment to collect as highly accurate of data that you can, and you'll occasionally get CoCoRaHS emails. There are some from some of the regional and national CoCoRaHS contacts. Some of those are below in the slide there, and also from your local CoCoRaHS coordinator. If you're in the Glasgow office, that'll be me. And so I'll occasionally send some emails out with some training materials for extra learning. Sometimes even just a heads up about a storm that's coming. So if you haven't sent in a report in a while, you can dust the cobwebs out of your gauge and maybe jump on in again. And so then the other thing you need to do is have a training, much like this one here today. And again, if you are on the training today and you simply just, if you know somebody out there that wanted to make it that couldn't, they're still able to join just because they couldn't be here today. They can still catch the training. There are resources online, and we're happy to point folks in that direction. And again, we can send this recorded version out to those folks as well. And then again, as I mentioned, you'll get a unique station number. So here's an example for our neck of the woods, Sheridan County, Montana, Plentywood.
Hey, Trent.
Kind of gives us. Yes.
Sorry, this is Kurt. Uh,
Hi,
your
Kurt.
your presentation went blank for a few slides. It's
Oh,
it's
did it?
back it's back online now. But if you want to go back a
Okay.
couple slides, maybe.
Okay. I thank you for letting me know. So let's see. So for those
The
that
one
didn't see,
the one with Nolan
let
with
me
the
see.
Bible or whatever. That's the last slide that was.
Oh, the okay. This commit. So you didn't see this one.
Yep, we saw that, and
All
then
right.
nothing after that.
And then nothing after that. Okay,
Yep.
so then this next slide, there may be a little bit of a lag or something, but this is just showing an example of what an in-person training would look like. And we're mostly doing things virtually today. If you look on the right-hand side, this is an example of what a station number will look like. It'll be more customized to your location. And then in the bottom left is an example of the login section to the CoCoRaHS webpage, and we can show you that in a little bit as well. So going forward here, we're going to talk about measuring snow, and it can be quite a challenge here sometimes in Montana. We have a lot of wind-driven events, so a lot of blowing and drifting, and it really can take a little bit of effort sometimes to get an accurate measurement. So we'll talk about some tips and tricks for that. First thing you'll need to do is if snow is anticipated, you can see your rain gauge. If it's the first snow of the season, this might be more applicable, but you'll have a funnel and an inner tube. You want to go ahead and remove that and just leave your outer gauge, your 4-inch gauge, out there to collect the snow. Otherwise, the snow is going to clog up the funnel and you won't get an accurate measurement. So we're going to talk about a few of the following here: some new snowfall, snowfall depth, the amount of water that's in the snow, and then something called a snow core. So we'll kind of tackle all of those things here today. And then one thing I'd also like to throw out there, if I do know that listening in today, we have a combination of new folks who are thinking about joining CoCoRaHS, but I know we also have one or two folks out there that are currently observers taking this as a refresher. If at the end anybody wants to share some success stories about why they enjoy CoCoRaHS, or maybe some tricks and tips they want to pass along on some of this, feel free to share your experience at the end. So first of all, snowfall we define as the accumulation of new snow and ice, so that would include things like sleet, that occurred in the past 24 hours, not including any melting or settling that's taken place. So to measure the snow, you get your yardstick or ruler, and you want to place it in the ground and get as close of a reading as you can, but you want to be careful as to where you place your yardstick. So in the springtime and in the fall, the concrete sidewalk, for example, may be a little bit warm and you may lose some to the melt. So you'll really want to look at some grassy surfaces as an example. Closer into winter, January, February, it's maybe safer to use the sidewalk or driveway, or you can continue being in the grass for your measurements to be consistent. The only thing that we want to encourage is to clean off your area that you are taking those measurements in, to start with a clean slate for the next event, so that you're not confounding it with the pre-existing snow that was already there on the ground. So one area you want to avoid is underneath a tree, because um, if you notice here, this person has a yardstick in the ground. It says only 3 inches, but if you go further away out in the open, he has a measurement of 6.5. So the tree branches and the like kind of obstructed the snowfall, and so it's just not the most reliable reading to count on. You want to get something that's more out in the open. And then here in Montana, very windy climate, and so what we recommend for situations like that, if you have a wind-driven event, to go ahead and take multiple readings and take an average to get a better representation. So then that leads us to total snow depth, which is the average depth of snow that includes the old snow as well as the new snow on the ground. And so if you want to report the snow on the ground, you might have a situation that looks like this, particularly if you've had a warm period after the snow, or maybe you might see this in the springtime as well. You'll see that the snow only partially covers the ground. And so what you do here, you take an average of the bare spots along with where the snow is. So as an example, if you notice the picture on your upper left, it looks a little bit deeper over by the fence. So they say that it might be about 2 inches. And then the bare spot, you would say that that's 0. So you report it as a 1 inch total snow depth. And if more than half the ground is bare, like the picture in the bottom right, then we'll just call that a trace for the most reliable measurement. Important thing is to be consistent. Try to measure in the same general locations from your day to day. So, for example, if you measured 2 inches of snow depth today, and then it didn't snow tonight, and tomorrow comes along, it doesn't snow again, and you take a measurement, and then you suddenly have 4 inches, that doesn't make much sense. You want to still have that 2 or maybe a little less if there was some melt off. So kind of double check your measurements. Maybe if you come in a little higher the next day, maybe you put it in a drift, or you need to go, take a double check. So something you might run into is the need to get snowfall liquid equivalent. So to do that, you'll notice your rain gauge. It might have a little bit of snow on the rim, like this image in front of you here. This particular way of handling that is you'll have a simple snow swatter. There's probably other objects that you can use to improvise as well, but these are fairly low cost. Just tap gently on the rim. Anything that falls into the gauge will count, and then we discard everything that falls out gently, just kind of clear the snow away from the gauge at that point. And then you'll want to go in and get a little bit of warm water, that inner tube that you took out before. Get a little bit of water in there, warm water, and take a measurement of that. So say a 1/2 inch. You toss that water back into the outer tube, and you let it melt after you get that measurement, of course. And so once that completely melts, I'm just going by a little bit faster here with the interest of time. This is the slide that's kind of more important here I wanted to focus on. So if you pour the sample with the funnel to help guide you so you don't lose any drops, you can pour, once the sample is melted, that outer tube back into the inner tube. So this is going to include that snow that was already in the outer tube, plus that water that you got from the sink, that warm tap water. So after it's all melted, you pour it into the funnel and then into that inner tube. And then you try to measure as best you can to the nearest 1/100th of an inch. And they give you an example here that you might see that the total was 79 hundredths. So if you added a 1/2 of an inch from your sink, you would then subtract that off, and the old snow that was on the ground melted down. That water is what's left behind. So if 79 is your total and you added 50 or a 1/2 inch, your final measurement there would be 79 hundredths minus a 1/2 inch, or 29 hundredths as your final reading. So that would be the amount of water that's in your new snow sample. So that's how you do that. And then you have a core sample, which is the basically a core of the snow on the ground caught. And so how you'll want to do that is take your best representative location, go out there, take a look. Once you find that spot, which is ideally something where you haven't had much in the way of drifting or melting going on, you place your gauge upside down and you push it down into the snow, and then maybe you stick your swatter underneath and you lift up, much like the image shown to the left and the right, so that you place that swatter underneath, so when you lift up the cylinder, it doesn't all fall out. So here's kind of a way to remember it. It's kind of the slide, lift, and flip method. So you put the slides, you slide the snow swatter underneath the gauge, you gently lift that on up, and then you kind of flip it and bring it inside to melt. Um, and then in deeper snow, you might have to push down a little bit and give it a little bit of a turn, and then you pull that on out. And in wetter snow, you might find that that just comes on out in one piece. It just kind of adheres to the tube, so you don't have to worry about as much of that coming out as you would with a drier snow. And that's for out here in Montana. You're going to see a wetter snow maybe more often in the early season and then in the springtime as well. So those are the main things that you're going to want to know how to measure in the wintertime. And in order, once you get your measurement, we want to learn how to actually record that. So you go into the CoCoRaHS webpage. There'll be a login location for you with your station once it's been created, and you enter that in. So here's the what the CoCoRaHS webpage again looks like, and you'll see on the upper, kind of the upper, almost middle part of the webpage, something that says login. You click that, and then you enter your created username and password, and then you'll see your forms that look like this. So one such form that you'll be familiar with is your daily precipitation. That would be any rainfall that occurs, which we talk more about in the warm season, but also your kind of your water equivalent once you melt that new snow down. You can see that there's a location for that total rain and melted snow gauge in inches to the nearest hundredth. So you just kind of follow the information there. The other thing I wanted to mention is we try to be consistent and send in our measurements around the same time each day so that we're comparing apples to apples. And we like that generally around 7 to 9 a.m. But we also understand that people have busy lives, whether it's work or travel or whatnot. So just because you can't do it at 7 or 8 a.m. doesn't mean you can't be part of CoCoRaHS. If noontime is the only time you can send in your observation, then by all means, send your observation in at noon. It's still reliable to us. So you go ahead and you enter your report on in to the nearest hundredth. There's a little spot down here for observation notes. So you might say something like, say you had a very wet spring snow event and it brought down some tree branches. You can make a little note of that in that observation note section for us as well. And here is an example of that. Then you just hit the submit button and you're good to go. You can also view your reports on the map by clicking on the state of Montana, and that's kind of what that looks like. And it'll bring you to a summary page by the day of all of the reports for that day, and you can compare what you got to your neighbor, those around you as well. So here in Sheridan County, far northeast Montana, here's an example of something we were talking about earlier, whereas there were a couple of reports of a trace of precip, but there are also some places that didn't get anything at all. So during a low precip event, we want to know what locations picked something up and who missed out. There are other types of reports that you'll want to be familiar with. That includes a hail report, things like your monthly zeros. I really want to hit on the monthly zeros and the multi-day precip report. So your monthly zeros are important because it's just as important to know when it didn't precipitate out as it did when you did have a big event. So for example, it might for you it might seem like, oh well, it's been dry all month. Why send anything in? I'm going to take a break from CoCoRaHS. It doesn't really matter. But keep in mind, right now, much of Montana is in a pretty exceptional drought. And so when we have your record of just how dry it's been at your station, that really helps out to kind of fill in that gap and just have more data to supplement what we already know about that. So it gives us more information, more ground truth. There's also a hail report. So in the summertime, you can measure whether you get that quarter-sized hail or larger. We go into a deeper dive of some of these in the summertime training, and an intense precip report. And then the monthly zeros is a good one for, especially if you've been on like vacation for a week and you just want to put in all at once the days that you didn't get anything. You can go ahead and do it that way as well. Or if you're on vacation and you actually got something, just check your rain gauge when you get back, and you put a little note in the comment section that you were away for the week, and then you put the dates that the precipitation occurred, so the day you left and then the day you checked the gauge, and then the amount. So you'll have your multi-day precipitation, the total depth of snow on the ground, and then that core precip that we talked about. Here's an example on the CoCoRaHS webpage. So in addition to the map, you're able to get actual reports from those around you to see what they look like, and you can compare what you got to those around you as well. And sometimes folks have a few questions they want to ask. So one question that comes up from time to time is, if I'm in CoCoRaHS, do I have to send in my report every day? The answer to that is it's helpful the more you can report, but you don't have to every single day. Again, if you're gone, you can, or you've just had a really busy week at work or something, you just didn't get to it, you can leave your gauge outside and report a multi-day total when you're able to. That's totally fine. If you don't have a great place to put your gauge, just realize that you're not alone. A lot of people don't have the ideal situation. There's obstructions in the yard. Maybe it's a tree that's in the way, or some kind of a roof or deck or whatnot. So do the best you can, and you're more than welcome to send photos to your local weather service office to try to solicit some opinions. One of the CoCoRaHS coordinators are more than welcome to, or more than willing to help you out and give you some advice. Dew that occurred in the morning is not considered precipitation. So those mornings you wake up, you see some droplets on the grass in the summertime. That's not considered precipitation when it occurs, but you can make a note of that in the comment section as a nice to know. And then the longer you stick with CoCoRaHS, we hope that if you join, that you stick with it for at least one season, but the longer you contribute, the more reliable your data become. You almost develop like a mini climatology of your location. If you've been doing this for 10 or 20 years, you can look back and start to think about what's normal, or hey, I've been doing this for 10 years and this is the biggest event I've ever had, or you start to pick up on things like that. So the more you do it, the more regularly you do it, the longer that you participate, the more your understanding of the weather and precipitation develops, and the more helpful those reports can be. So that's all that we have for prepared remarks. I do want to take just a very quick moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen very quickly, because what I want to do is share a screen with the CoCoRaHS website, because I would like to show you a couple of things there. So hopefully you are able to see the CoCoRaHS website in front of you right now. So this orange button up at the top is what we were talking about in the beginning. If you click on that, you then click on the United States, and then this is the form that you'll want to fill out. You just put your name, your phone information, and your email, and then your address, and then your station information. And that basically will help to create a station location for you. So when you send in your reports, they'll show up on the map, and we'll get that information. And once you fill out this form, if I were to scroll down a little bit here, if it'll let me, at the very bottom it says submit application. Once you do that, your local Montana coordinator, whether it's Kurt who's sitting in on the call, whether it's me, we'll get in touch with you and ask you if you have any questions, if you need any additional training, if you need any help getting started, that kind of thing. We're all here to support you guys. So the other thing I want to show you, we'll go back home, is on the right-hand side, if you're looking to get a rain gauge or some low cost equipment to get yourself started, there are some resources through the CoCoRaHS webpage. This particular one is Weather Your Way. And you might ask if you can use your own rain gauge or something that's different that you may have around. We do like folks to try to use that 4-inch capacity official CoCoRaHS rain gauge just because that allows us to kind of compare apples to apples so that our measurements are consistent. Different equipment might be calibrated slightly differently and may not be as precise. And so it really does help us to make sure that our data are reliable. So that's what I have available and prepared today. I'm happy to spend a couple of minutes to answer any questions if anybody has, or I'd really like to encourage anybody out there, if you're a current CoCoRaHS observer, I'd love to um, hear any success stories. If you have been a reporter and you have any tips that you'd like to share. I do see somebody asking a question: does the SIG weather report go directly to the MSO forecaster screen? So I'm guessing MSO is referring to the Missoula office. So Trent would probably have to. Oh, okay. So somebody already jumped in and answered that. So it looks like. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Trent would be the one to get in touch with there to know for sure. But what I can say, SIG weather report, is that once you send in your report to CoCoRaHS, we have access to that immediately through the CoCoRaHS webpage. We have an admin section that we can check out. And you can go in and look at it as well through the admin section. So I'm not sure about what you're referring to as an MSO forecaster screen, but they do have access to your reports right away as soon as you send them in. Um, and that's why, oh, so Kurt's going to try to step away too and find out what he can as well. So he might be able to add in some more detail. But that's what I was getting at before when I mentioned that, your reports can help save lives. So if you have some added information and you're wondering, you're on the fence about sending it in, I would encourage you to go ahead and send that to us. Actually, one of the things I can say is that when you send in your CoCoRaHS reports, um, a lot of times we'll
Hey,
we'll
Rich.
get those available to us, and we'll include that in like our warning information and things like that. So, Kurt, do you have something you want to add?
Yep, I
It
just
looked like you had your
double
mic.
checked. I just, oh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I just double checked here at the Billings office, and we do get significant reports from CoCoRaHS instantly into our AWIPS at the forecaster's desk.
per- perfect, Kurt. Thanks for checking on that. I assumed that was
I
the
think
case, but I
the
didn't
office
want
has
to.
to set that up.
Yeah, I didn't want to say specifically on behalf for like Missoula. I don't know if they're configured exactly the same way, but I know that, for example, in AWIPS we also get um, a little alert when CoCoRaHS reports come in as well. But I wasn't sure if that was true for every office. But I do know that we all have access to those reports. So Kurt, thanks for double checking on that. That's good to know that that's set up everywhere. Um, Good to know.
And
Does anybody have anything? Oh, go ahead.
if whoever's listening, whatever forecast office you're under, you might want to check with them directly just to make sure. But here at the in the Billings forecast area, we do get them instantly.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a good recommendation to check with your local office just to know if it applies to you too. So, any other questions out there, or does anybody have any tricks or tips they want to share? They can share it either in the chat or take your mic off mute and jump in the conversation if you like.
Well, this is Kurt again, so I do have a tip.
Go for it.
I have noticed that when you're measuring the snowfall, um, this might sound um, like common sense, but it depends on how short the grass is or long. And I have noticed measurements where someone just sticks their ruler down until it stops, but the grass blades could be 2 inches long, but the snow might only be an inch. So you want to make sure you get down and look um, and stop your ruler where the snow starts, if that makes sense.
That's a really great tip, Kurt. It really goes to show you how different, agriculture can affect the snow accumulation. So, like you were saying, just having short or taller grass can make a difference to how accurate your snowfall measurement can be if you're not careful. So, let's see. So, somebody asked if you're thinking about joining, is it best to start at the beginning of the calendar year? I would say, Cindy, that you can join at any time at all. I would say that the winter time is a great time to get going because you get kind of familiar with taking your snowfall measurements, and you can put your rain gauge out there without the inner tube and without the funnel and start collecting those new snowfall totals as they occur. And also, if you feel like you want to get started in the summertime, if snow's not your thing, and you want to help out with rain and thunderstorms, that's cool too. And if you want to do all year, that's also fun. I don't think that there is an ideal time. I think it's basically what works best for you, is I think what can work best for us as well. In terms of how long it takes to get the 4-inch rain gauge, it probably will depend on where you do get it. If you check out the resources on the CoCoRaHS webpage, and you go through the process of making a purchase there, they'll probably have some shipping information, and they'll be able to give you some guidance there. And also, that's also something we can talk about more once you sign up and a station's created for you. And we have your email address or your contact information, we can reach out then and talk more in depth, to help you get started on that, and get you going in the right direction. Perfect. You're welcome, Cindy. Thank you. And yeah, so that's the last thing I guess I'll say about joining is, so if you're on the fence, I encourage you to just give it a try, and I think you'll find that after you've done it for a few weeks, it just kind of grows on you over time. And so, and it's really easy. It's just a quick form, takes a few minutes, and then once we get your contact information, we reach out, help you get what you need to get started. And then probably within a couple of weeks, I would imagine you're in a position that you can start taking measurements and sending those in, and really being a part of something. I think one of the things that is great about CoCoRaHS is it's really a unique way to make a positive difference to the community, to help others, because it's something that's not only fun, uh, and you get to learn so much about weather and taking measurements and science in general, but you're also doing something that helps others, which is a great feeling. So, with that, I'm gonna, I guess, wrap things up for today. I want to thank everybody. I know your time is valuable. Hopefully, you found that it's time well spent, and just want to thank everybody for being here today. And
Yeah, they just do their own thing.
we'll try to see if this recording was a success, and hopefully get something shared for you all in the next few weeks. And so, if whether you want to look at it again as to see some reminders, or maybe you know somebody else that wants to join, feel free to go ahead and share that. And it looks like somebody's sharing a success story as we get ready to log off here. So I do want to share that with everybody before we officially log off for the day. So, quick success story from Jeff says, every time we take a core over 20 inches, this is somebody that is a current CoCoRaHS observer, because the tube is only 18 inches and getting 1/4 of ice off the base of that snow table after several compacted layers on top of it.
because, yeah,
um,
like products are raw, so.
let me see. They say that they enjoy seeing their data in on the no risk graph as well. So yeah, I guess one thing I'll add about that is that your CoCoRaHS data is available across multiple resources. It's not just used at weather service forecast offices, so it really is beneficial to a number of folks. Um, and that is an interesting point that when you get a really large core, but your tube is only so big. So appreciate that insight. So with that, wish everybody a good rest of your day, and thank you for being here today and for joining our train.